Hey there, Fletch from All Things Overlanding here. Today I'm joined by Scotty from the Patreon group, and we are going to be talking about the top 3 pieces of gear that we bring on every single trip. This is one of those once a month episodes where actually the people that are in my Patreon group come and actually get to hang out on the podcast and on the YouTube channel and get to be in an episode. So if that's something you're interested in, check out the description down below to see the link for Patreon and come join us on the Patreon group. We'd love to have you. But as I mentioned, Scotty is here from the group today, and it's going to be a really good episode because he's a brand new Overlander, and I've been doing it for a few years, so you're actually going to get to see the difference between what a sort of more experienced Overlander brings on every trip versus what a brand new person brings on every trip. So there's going to be a couple of different experiences, perceptions of what is necessary when you go out on these trips. So hopefully it's interesting and helpful for you guys. But without further ado, let's get into the 3 pieces of overlanding gear that a new and experienced Overlander bring on every trip. So, hey, everybody, as I mentioned in the intro, today we are talking about kind of the top 3 pieces of gear that we take with us on all of our trips, whether it be like an overnight camping trip or a longer 3-day or 4-day or 5-day or longer overlanding trip. There's always those pieces of gear that are just sort of necessary, at least to us, right? So today we're going to talk about that. I'm joined by my buddy Scott from Arkansas. Scott, hello. Thanks for being with me. So I've been doing overlanding for about 4 or 5 years now. And Scott, how long have you been doing it?
Less than a year, right at a year, something like that. Just kind of getting into it.
Cool. So that's part of why we thought this might be a good sort of thing is, I'm going to kind of talk from a place where I've kind of been doing it for a little bit. Scott's going to talk from a place where he's a little bit newer. So we get kind of 2 different perspectives on it. We can kick this off here. We'll just kind of run through. I think we'll just take turns talking about our 3 top things that we take, and we'll just kind of run through them here. So, do you want to go first, Scott, or you want me to go first with my first one? What do you prefer?
Oh, it's your show. I'll let you go first.
All right. Well, I'll kick us off here. So, I've been thinking about this a little bit prior to us getting together. And so I think the first thing that I always take, it's just in the truck nonstop. Now it's not always on, but it's always in the truck, is my fridge. And I'm a little spoiled now that I've had this fridge for I've had a fridge for probably 3 years out of the last 5. And I did do cooler. I started cooler. I was messing with the ice. I went on a 4-day trip to West Virginia and had to stop at a gas station and pay like $15 worth of money for ice there to top it back off midway through the trip. And it just wasn't very convenient. So for me, I switched to a fridge. I did a full sort of shelf in the rear of the Frontier that takes up half of the rear seat. And then I've got the fridge on a slider there, so I can just slide it right out and get access to it. But I mean, that's been a game changer for me to be able to have cold drinks. Sometimes I'll use it like when I go to the grocery store. If I know we're going on a big grocery trip or we might have to run multiple errands, I'll kick it on the night before and then we'll go to the store. We know we can put our cold stuff in it and we can still go run our errands without having to run home to get everything into the fridge. So it's just a handy thing, but on trips especially, it's like super amazing to be able to just pick up, sometimes I'll be running through going up to like the UP to go to like the core trip or whatever. I will stop sometimes and pick up some beer, but maybe sometimes it's not cold, and to be able to throw it in there and not have to worry about it melting my ice, and having the ability to cool things that maybe weren't cool before is kind of a nice thing to have. So that's kind of my first piece of gear that I always have to take to the fridge. So how about you, Scott?
First off, I'm still doing this with a cooler.
Yeah,
I need a fridge. I can see
there's nothing wrong with it. I used it for years. It's perfectly fine. It's just once you go fridge, you never go back.
Well, right. And as I'm sitting here thinking I'm going to go on a 4-day trip, and we're going to be in the Ozark Mountains. I'm going to have one chance to buy ice, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I had originally, I've been putting some thought into this. Again, I'm pretty new.
Sure.
Don't know exactly what all I'm doing, but something that is going to start accompanying me on every trip is a little power box that I built. The box comes from Harbor Freight.
Okay.
Then I bought.
Yeah, nice.
That right there for $20 off Amazon. It has 2 USBs and a car
Yeah, like a DC plug.
DC plug.
A voltmeter and an on-off switch. That's all you need, really.
Right. So we use this all weekend, this past weekend, keeping our phones and watches charged. And it right now is currently setting at 12.0 volts.
Wow. Yeah.
I had an old motorcycle battery laying around that I bought that was too big.
Huh.
And I thought, right there's my battery. And like I said, the electronics came with all the wires and plugs and everything I needed. All I had to do was drill holes in it, screw it all together, and custom cut my wires, run everything in parallel. And so if you don't have a power supply like I don't, then that's handy for watches, GoPros, phones, things like that to help keep them charged. If I'm not using something throughout the day that I would use at night, I can always leave it on the charger. But we charge 2 phones and 2 watches all weekend long with it. So that is definitely something that will accompany me on every trip here forward.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I love that you like repurpose something that you had laying around, right? Because then it keeps your costs down. So then you make use of something. All right. So next thing, item number 2, I'm trying to remember. My next one I was thinking of is, and I don't know if you guys don't know what this is. I'll put a picture up here on screen. I'll put a link in the description down below, but I carry a Unijack with me everywhere that I go now. I used to be a high lift guy. I had to use that once on the Xterra on the sliders, and it was sketchy. And I wasn't even off road. I was in a parking lot. I actually pulled a valve stem out leaving the National Forest and then blew a tire at 70, my driver front tire at 70 on the highway, and got to have some fun with that. And then I limped it off, and luckily I had a compressor with me. So a compressor is also a good thing. I don't necessarily always have it, although I am installing it in the truck now. But I did air it up enough to get it sort of limped off the road to a hotel parking lot, jacked it up on the sliders with the high lift, and then threw the spare on it. But the whole thing was a nightmare, right? Like the high lift is just creaking and it's sketchy, and it's, I didn't have a rubber floor or, mount for it. So I was on metal on concrete, and that didn't feel great. And so I was very leery of it. And so I found this thing called a Unijack. I heard a couple people talking about it. It's basically like a jack stand with a built-in bottle pump. That's basically what it is. So it has a little locking teeth on it. You jack it up and then you put the pin in and you lock it in place. I like that though, because of like the size of my truck, because of how big it is on the 35s and stuff. It just makes me feel a lot safer with it, being able to lock it in place. And you can kind of put it on a diff or an axle or just about anywhere that you really need to get it. Whereas again, with the high lift, I either had to put it on a slider or the front bumper, or, there's an attachment where you could hook it to a wheel. But most of the time I'm trying to change a tire. I mean, that's mainly what I've done with it. So that's kind of why I switched to the Unijack. It's also smaller, so it's got a wider base, right? But then it's not nearly as long as a high lift. So I actually keep it in my deck system. It's actually in a drawer. So it's out of the weather. It's stored someplace watertight. And it's just always in the truck. But, you could argue the same with recovery. That's kind of along those lines. I think recovery / tools to be able to work on your vehicle, or at least change a tire kind of a deal, or things that I always would take with me. So that's my second thing.
I've got a high lift, and I absolutely hate a high lift jack.
Yeah.
When I was 14 or 15, my mom and I were changing flat. My dad had a high lift. And when I went to let the jack down back in those days, if you remember the old bumper jacks that hooked in the bumper, you could hit that handle when you're sitting down, it'd walk itself down. For a 14-year-old, it's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah.
But I did that with a high lift one time, not realizing the high lift has a 4-foot-long handle.
Yeah.
And I was leaning over when I kicked that thing off, and it hit me under the chin and went up to the top, and then hit me in the back of the head, and it sit there and flipped on me all the way down.
Wow.
I've hated a high lift ever since.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Sounds horrible.
But my second piece, again, being new to this, I don't know what I do and do not need. My second piece is my coffee pot.
Yeah.
I got a percolator. I'm using a camp stove for my cook, just an old cheap Coleman cook stove.
Sure.
And so I went to Walmart, bought me an Ozark Trail stainless steel percolating coffee pot.
Nice.
And because I'm one that has to have coffee in the morning.
Yeah, that makes
And
perfect sense.
so it stays in my truck. You know, I've got that system, basically a home built deck system
Yep.
in the back of my truck. And, you know, my camp stove, my coffee pot stay in there all the time, except when I bring them in the house to clean them, and they go right back in the truck.
That makes perfect sense. I'm one of those weirdos that doesn't drink coffee. So I don't know what to make it. I don't know if it's a pro or a con. I don't have to mess with anything or cook, like make any coffee, but then I don't get the benefits of coffee either, I guess. So
Right. Come here, kiddo.
hey, buddy.
For those that are watching, this is my grandson Avery.
Hey, Avery.
He's my camping and wheeling buddy.
That's my kids now. It's like one of them kind of wants to go. The other one's kind of just like, yeah, I'd rather just stay home, Dad. He's 12 now, so he's just kind of over it. So yeah, enjoy it while you can.
I don't want to go today now. I don't want to go today. I just
okay, you have to sit here and be quiet.
So yeah, now let's dive into our third one. Oh, my third one is my trash bag. I have a Last US bag, sort of trasharoo style, like spare tire trash bag. Again, I didn't even really think about those things. Like when I first started, I didn't even really realize they were a thing. Like 5 years ago, they weren't as popular or as big. And the first time I took my kids, actually, and we went out there, they all pooped in the toilet. And then I realized we have to take that home. Like we have to do something with that. And so we had to take it in the vehicle, and it stunk the whole 2-hour drive home. And that's when I was like, you know what? Maybe an external trash bag is the way to go. And I will say, since I've had it, it has changed everything. Like, I mean, just to be able to throw stuff in, like trail cleanups get a lot easier. You know, we were on the highway, or we were on a gravel road in Hoosier National Forest, and somebody had thrown their Chick-fil-A trash on the side. I just stopped really quick, got out, threw it in the trash bag, no problem. So it's one of those things that's like, seems a bit like unnecessary, but then once you start using it, it's actually pretty amazing. So
I'll have to figure out how to strap one to the back of the pickup.
Yeah. I saw a guy, and I thought this was pretty interesting. It's a Frontier guy. He doesn't have a rear mounted spare, but he has a bed rack, and he mounted his inside the bed rack now, but he has an open bed rack, not like an enclosed thing like yours. You probably want to do that, but I just was like, oh, that's actually kind of a clever idea to put it inside the rack, because it's still outside the truck, and then it's not getting the wind and the weather and all that, so it probably lasts longer.
I love you.
I might look at the camper shell handles and stuff and see if there's a way that because I've got one of them that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
well, there's got to be some sort of, I mean, I hate to drill holes in fiberglass, but some sort of like a resealable hook or something, something that would like seal water tight, even if you had to put a bolt through the top or something.
I can fabricate something.
Yeah, something like a D-ring or something, right? Like 2 D-rings up top, and then you do something through the bumper or something.
Well, I can build something that hangs over my tailgate.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Open the camper lid, hang that over the tailgate, and then close the camper lid, and that'll keep it secure. I'll look into it. My third piece, I don't know, I'd have to say is my tent, because that's my only form of sleeping right now is a tent. I am kind of a wuss. I do carry an air mattress with me.
I don't blame you. I hate sleeping on the ground.
Yeah, one of the things when I first started listening to you, one of the very first things you said about your rooftop was you were tired of sleeping on the ground.
Yeah.
And you tried 2 or 3 different ways of camping, and it didn't work until you finally got into the rooftop tents. My tent and my sleeping mattress go with me, and then I've got a small inverter so I can blow up the mattress. That's it. Again, I'm too new to this to have gone through all the gear that you have and figured out, and Jack,
all the money wasted.
Well, either or, to figure out what I do and don't need. Yes, I take tools with me all the time, because you never know. Zip ties.
Yeah.
Zip ties and duct tape. Because you never know. Basic camp gear stays in my truck 100% of the time.
Yeah. Love it.
So that's kind of where I'm at with all this stuff.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. That's the thing too, is like, for those of you listening at home, like this is a great example, right? Of like, I'm talking about bougie stuff here, right? That you don't actually need. You don't actually need a fridge. You don't actually need a trasharoo. the Unijack thing, I think, is pretty useful. Some sort of a recovery tools slash ability to work on your vehicle is important. I mean, that's the only thing really that honestly that I've talked about that's necessary. I mean, we're not talking about only gear that's necessary, so I don't feel bad about the things that I said. But I mean, what you're saying, Scott, is 100% right. Like, you don't have to have tons and tons of bougie exterior extra gear that requires. I mean, like, that's the thing with the fridge is I'm running a whole dual battery system and a whole red arc thing just to support all that, plus all my other lights and all that stuff. So I mean, the deeper you get into it, the more money you waste and spend. And like, again, my truck's sitting in my driveway broken right now. I've got all this gear and all this stuff. And I went out tonight and I just looked at my red arc. I'm like, I'm at 100%. My solar's keeping everything topped off. I can't drive it. It doesn't, if you just have a reliable vehicle and something to sleep in and something to cook with, that's really all you need. So
I think it was you said in the very beginning, grab what you got and go.
Yeah.
Take what you got available, whatever vehicle you got, whatever camping gear you've got, and just go and figure out what you need. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm figuring out, like, I can already tell you that I need a fridge. Okay, I want a fridge, but it's going to fall into the need category because, again, I'm getting ready to go on a 4-day venture and I've got one shot at ice and that's it.
Yeah.
And I don't have a $300 cooler to keep ice for 5 days.
Well, and for a $300 cooler, you could get a $300 Alpacool 58-quart fridge. Now you got to have power. That's where you get in. That's where it actually gets expensive. Fridges are cheap, but you got to have a good AGM battery, starter battery, and maybe a backup like a NOCO or something just in case you kill the battery. But yeah. So, I like that. I love that stuff. So I think this was great. I hope for, everybody listening at home that you got some good ideas here and that you see that disparity, right? And you see that you don't need to have all that fancy stuff or do that stuff, but sometimes it is nice to have. So like, as you move through it, like you said, Scott, like you'll learn the stuff, but just don't listen to like people like me or anybody else on YouTube that says you need to go buy this and this and this and this. Like, go out for yourself, see what you need, and then make your own decisions based on your budget. So, absolutely. I think that's great. Thanks, Scott, for being with me.
You bet.
All right, guys, so that was the episode. Thanks again to Scotty for taking the time to hang out with me. Again, we do this once a month, every single month, for all the people that are in the Patreon group. Whoever's available, if you're available on the night that we choose and you want to come hang out, you get to be on the podcast, you get to be on the YouTube channel, and we all just hang out and talk about overlanding stuff. So if that's something you're interested in, down in the description below will be links to the Patreon page, to all my other social channels. If you want to come hang out on any of those, I'd love to have you, but definitely click through that Patreon link and come join the Patreon. We'd love to have you in the group. We've also got an exclusive Discord that only the Patreon folks get to chat in, and we chat 24/7. So any questions you've got, any gear stuff, rig stuff that you're working on, we've got a Discord that's always going, so you can come and hang out over there. But we'd love to have you. But again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.